And what you see is a very simple list of very simple activities. Walking, talking, looking at fire, cooking, obviously eating, obviously sex, but also dancing, music, being outdoors most of every day, sleeping on the ground, etc., etc. I've made the Paleolithic list, and it doesn't take very long, and they're all, seeing things by moonlight, for instance, being able to make a bed on the ground without much forethought, in the same way that you might be surprised that you're good at sex the first time you do it, like somebody else knows about this, and thank God for that. Well, you can make yourself a bed on the ground without anyone training you how to. Surprising and yet true. And it goes on like that, so I'll put the Paleolithic list even up on a PowerPoint, which is like the only time in my life I ever try to use visual aids, just to help people to think about it. We still do all these activities, and yet almost every one of them has been commodified and technologized and turned into something that other people can make money off of. And for you doing them when they've been altered like this, they're either augmented, so that, say, you're running, but you're sitting on your butt and you're going like 70 miles an hour because you're in a car. Well, that's the technological sublime, because if in your Paleolithic mind, it's a kind of a miracle. Even more so, to the point of terror, when to fly in an airplane and look out the window, etc. Every one of the activities on the list, including, sex as pornography, has either been augmented by technology or else virtualized by technology. So they don't really do it. You watch it being done, or you do it with your thumbs and watch little images of it being done, rather than doing it with your body. And sometimes this creates the technological sublime. You go into this state of ecstasy that we live in so much that we get used to it as normality itself, and actually take paid vacations in order to get out of the technological sublime and just sit on a beach for a week and de-technologize ourselves, once again paying for it, just to get back to the Paleolithic norm, which is experienced as a relief and a vacation and a wonderful thing. Even though, at any point in your lives, you can simply walk outdoors, sit down on the ground, in the sunlight, talk to a friend, face-to-face, in actual physical contact, often good to do a little grooming, to be in physical contact, touching each other, talking. Well, it turns out that's always the best event of every day, and all of the stuff that's being paid for is part of this hyperconsumption stupidity. And the kids who've fallen in love with various sports, almost every sport is just like throwing rocks at things. That's what it comes to. And what a joy. Just to throw a rock, and then if you hit something, it's like, oh my God. So, thus the kids that'll shoot baskets all evening for an hour, and making 10 baskets in a row is more important to them than getting an A in the class that, in other words, their life priorities seem completely skewed, and yet not, because what's really happening is they're getting back into their Paleolithic mind, which is so huge, so powerful. So when I give this lecture to college kids, about somewhere between a tenth to a quarter of the audience has got the big light bulb gone off over their head. It's a beautiful thing to see. This is quite visible on their faces, that they've been thinking this all their life, but inchoately, incoherently, and without anybody ever telling it to them from a lecture stage, and without anybody ever theorizing it, of giving them the reasons why they feel the way they do, the power of their emotions. So it keeps me traveling, it keeps me talking to college audiences, just to see that look on people's faces. And if it has a huge value, because it turns out that activities are extremely low carbon. They just talk about if you run a carbon burn, the technological sublime is always high carbon burn, and the Paleolithic norm is always as low carbon burn as you can get. It still burns carbon, because we eat, we breathe, etc. We're animals. There's no doubt about it. You cannot get to carbon negative without some kind of extreme and technological method. An ordinary Paleolithic life does burn a little carbon, but so much less than what we do as technological humans, that you can do what makes you healthier, what makes you happier as an animal, and also makes you more virtuous as a world citizen in the year 2010. So college kids are thinking, these goddamn baby boomers, they torched the planet, and now we have to behave like saints to make up for it. Nobody likes that, hear that message. It's a much better message to take to a young audience to say, you know what, this is a stupid world, and there's a lot of suggestions out of the culture asking you to pay with your life for doing stupid stuff and making yourself unhealthy and unhappy. You can always walk away. This is something that the Dalai Lama says. You can always walk away from injustice. And you can always walk away from stupidity too. And this is something that when college students hear it, they're thinking, well, I've got student debts, you know, I've got to get a stupid job in order to pay my stupid debts, etc. They're already on the wheel. But nevertheless, they're a lot less on the wheel than those of us with mortgages, with children, with job obligations, and with this idea in our heads that all that crap matters. And in terms of keeping the kids alive, it does matter. So in a way, it's better to talk to the young and get them tracked on a different track. Because path dependency, a phrase out of engineering and out of ecology, in other words, whatever path you're on, you depend on it, and you cannot change it instantaneously. There's a certain path dependency to the built infrastructure and even to our culture itself. So I then, you know, especially since yesterday I went through the indulgence of telling you all about my personal life and what I love, I will just continue with that because it fits so well with the Paleolithic life. And this is not Paleolithic, it's Neolithic, just keeping a garden. And even if you don't have land that you can turn into garden, because some people don't, you do have usually enough room and sunlight to put some plants in pots and start to grow a little bit of food. And this is transformative, not because you grow very much of your total food. I keep a pretty big garden, and in my part of the world, I can grow 2 or 3 crops a year on that land. In other words, a good winter crop as well as a summer crop, so they're different crops. And yet I still think I've tried to estimate, I think I grow about maybe 2 to 5% of my family's food, maybe 10% in midsummer, with a Greek salad every day coming out of the land for lunch. But 10% would probably represent the highest point, and most optimistically. So it's not true quantity here, it's quality and also education. What it does for you psychologically to know that you're growing food, to pay attention to it, and to realize how out of control you are. How immediately you understand those agricultural cultures that have like a god for everything. Well, of course. It makes perfect sense. You instantly start praying to the weather god, and to the soil god, and to the fungus god. Please do not put a cucumber fungus in my garden this year, because I like my Greek salads, etc. And it's not under your control. You cannot go down to the local market and get a Home Depot or whatever and get a pesticide that will take care of many of these problems. You know, this whole engineering notion that problem, solution, doesn't work that way, and particularly if you're in an organic garden, and the agreement is that nobody will use artificial poisons to kill things off. Then it becomes harder, and even if you had the full panoply of pesticides, you could not guarantee that things would go well. Little droughts, little disasters, little epidemics, and suddenly you are in famine land if you couldn't go down to the grocery store. And that'll make you religious in the bad way of fear. But it's educational, because our whole society is trapped in that situation. We only have about 6 months of food reserves for the population of the planet. It's only going to take the slightest little disaster in food supply to panic the world, and hoarding will begin, and hoarding kills the supply system. When demand goes infinite, supply can't keep up with it, then everything crashes and social trust goes away. In essence, we are on a tightrope together. Big, skinny tightrope. It's not even individual that you can keep your balance. We all have to agree to keep balance as a group, like some ridiculous circus troupe. And then there's idiots jumping on one end of it, trying to knock us off. So it's worse than just everybody cooperating. It's like 70% of us cooperating and 30% of us trying to knock us off. Some version of the spirit and intellect. They don't understand the situation, apparently. Part of keeping a garden is keeping a compost heap. And then you kind of get into that whole circle of life thing, and it gets pretty interesting, and you don't feel so wasteful with all the food that you throw away as a first person. I'm going to be throwing it away. It's getting very expensive soil. And you know, you cannot keep mice and rats out of your compost heap, so now you've got pets, you know. They're wild pets. And they're bold. And every time you turn the compost, you suddenly feel the power of a god. You know, it's apocalypse now for an entire community that you're going to knock apart. And some of them resent it and bare their teeth at you as they run away. And they're going to be back. So hopefully, I actually knock my compost heaps to say, you know, this is the end of the world, get the babies out of the way and bring them back later. And you can see that happen over a period of time. You know, there'll be a bunch of mice and rats carrying these tiny little pink things away and looking at me like, fuck you. And then they come back and all is well. And, you know, after you've speared a few little pink babies with a pitchfork, you don't want to do that anymore, so that you try to coexist with your own fellow people, the horizontal brothers and sisters, as John Muir put it so beautifully, that we live with us on this planet and so often treat as mere objects. But the more you pay attention, the more you understand that especially the mammals on this planet are just people who happen to take slightly different shapes. And it's not at all clear that we are more intelligent than any other mammal on this planet. So I mean, there's a political aspect to this. You have to vote all this. You have to argue all this. You have to try to get first to your government to more green, to more social democrat, to more justice, to more women's rights. All that is crucially important. But what I think is better is not better, but a necessary complementary component to that is to live the life already in advance of the fact. They used to talk about already existing Marxism, already existing socialism, and it was important to pay attention to that and understand it, etc., etc. I would say we have already existing socialism, which is the project of science itself, the project of togetherness, but also already existing utopia in the way that you try to live within the giant capitalist world machine that we're in, to alter it from inside, from grassroots level, from denying the validity of their underlying assumptions of what is goodness, what is success, and saying, you know what, that's a con game, that's a scam you're running on me to steal my life. And I have a different plan, and I have friends who do it too. I have a world community that does it too, because now with the internet, everybody who has this view can be linked up and know that you aren't just a freak or an eccentric. You know, I love Henry David Thoreau, but his sense of isolation within his world of Walden, of Concord, Massachusetts in 1860 was severe because he felt like a crazy person for being sane. Well, we don't have to suffer through that. We have a perfectly good human contact with like-minded citizens, and we can strive for that cultural change to where figure and ground reverse, to where what's seen as eccentric and becomes centric, in the literal sense of taking over the center from the outside in, from the periphery. And that if power is stupid, then maybe you can make it crash like some lumbering dinosaur, and you be the little mammals crawling around, knowing, with the help of the prophecy vision of science fiction, knowing that you're on the right side of history if we are going to survive at all. So this, I'm going to bring it to a close and open it up to questions with just the idea that this is a kind of a potted version of my current stump speech to the world, what I would say to the college kids, and what I share with the science fiction community with the full belief that it's already pretty much known to everybody, and it's just something that we kind of celebrate and go out there and work on. At least that's what I hope and trust. Okay, thanks. Let's shift over to questions. Yes, sir.